Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all the benevolent lineage masters, the Dharma infinitely profound and subtle as rarely encountered even in millennials. Now that we are able to hear, study, and follow it, may we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings. Let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. Let's continue with our study of homage and offerings to the 16 elders. We have talked about 7 noble elders already. The 7th noble Arhat is Kanakavattsa. In the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish, he is called protected by an elephant. In Chinese Buddhist history, it's recorded that Master Uda met Kanakavattsa and obtained great blessings from him. When I taught the purification practice, I shared their story. Master Uda was an eminent monk who was the national master during the reign of Emperor Yizong of Tang. When Master Uda was young, he met a monk in a monastery who was severely ill. At that time, many people were afraid of going near him, but Master Uda tried every effort to take care of this sick monk. After the monk recovered, he said, "Thank you for your kindness and care. If you ever encounter difficulties and need help in the future, please find me in this place." It's a mountain. The mountain is currently located in Pengzhou, Sichuan province. It's called Jiulong Mountain. He also said that he will be near 2 giant pine trees. Later, Master Uda continued to practice the Dharma diligently and gradually became well known throughout the country. Once, when Master Uda was teaching in the capital city, Emperor Yizong attended the lecture and gifted him a precious sandalwood Dharma seat. When he saw the seat, in that moment, he felt a sense of pride and thought to himself, "I truly am an eminent monk. Even the emperor venerates me." Due to that moment of arrogance, his merit was impaired. Soon afterwards, a tumor developed on his knee. What made the tumor alarming was that it looked like a human face and it would eat food just like a living being. Master Uda saw many doctors, but none of them could cure the tumor. Later, he remembered the words of the sick monk at Mount Jiulong and wondered if he could help. He went to the mountain and found the 2 pine trees. Between the trees, he saw a large monastery towering into the sky and the monks standing there waiting as if to receive him. After they greeted each other, Master Uda was invited to stay for the night, and he described his pain to the monk. The monk said, "Don't worry, just wash the tumor with the spring water tomorrow and you will recover." Next morning, when Master Uda wanted to wash the tumor as instructed, the tumor started to speak. "Wait, let me explain why I appeared on your knee first. Since you're a very learned master, you must know the story of how Yuan Ang had Chao Cuo wrongly executed. You were Yuan Ang, and I was Chao Zuo in our former lives. Because of you, I was brutally cut in half at the waist. I was fully hate you for that and vowed for revenge. But for the next 10 lifetimes, you were a monk and upheld your vows purely because of your virtuous conduct. I had no chance to take my revenge on you, but this time, because of that moment of arrogance you had, your virtue was weakened, so I took advantage. Now, through the blessings of Venerable Kanakavaca, I no longer hold any grudges against you. When Master Uda then washed the tumor with that water, the pain was so excruciating that he fainted. When he woke up, the tumor was gone, and so was the monastery. The monk who helped Master Uda was venerable protected by an elephant, or the elder Kanakavaca. The 16 Arhats have been seen by many masters across India and the Tibetan and Han regions. It's said that whenever Dharma teaching takes place, the 16 Arhats will also be present. So when we count the number of the people attending Dharma teaching, for example, if there are 50 people present, we would add the 16 Arhats so that the total becomes 66. His Holiness Dharma Rinpoche would always remind us to add the 16 Arhats whenever we made a count of our Sangha members. So at Dharma teaching assemblies, the 16 Arhats would be there through their miraculous powers. This is recorded in many stories of the 16 Arhats. By the way, in the Chinese Tripitaka, there is a story of a bhikkhu called Nagapala, whose name also means protected by an elephant. He appeared to be slow-witted when he was studying with the Buddha at the first. Here is the story in Samyukta Agama. One evening, the Buddha went out to practice walking meditation. As a light rain was falling, Indra followed behind the Buddha, sheltering the Buddha through his miraculous power. Nagapala was then the Buddha's attendant and also accompanied them. They walked for a long time, even though it continued to drizzle. The Buddha didn't appear to want to rest anytime soon. The Nagapala had a strange idea to scare the Buddha so that he would stop for rest. Back then, there was a tradition in Magadha that if a child didn't stop crying at night, the parents would scare them, saying, Makula is coming. Makula was the name of a local ghost. To this day, in Han and Tibetan regions, people would still say, don't go out at night, a ghost is out there. When I was little, I was very scared of a chubby lady named Chaso. So whenever I want to go out, my parents would say, don't go outside or Chaso will come and get you. They actually work every time. She is still alive. I came across her last year in my hometown and told her how much I used to be afraid of her when I was young. Of course, that's not the case now. Back to the story. At the time, the tradition existed concerning Makula. Seeing that the Buddha didn't want to rest, Nagapala came up with the idea of trying to scare the Buddha. He disguised himself as a monster and waited on the path where the Buddha was due to pass and then yelled, Makula, the ghost is coming. Indra was extremely irritated when he saw this and said, "What kind of fool is it that tries to intimidate the Buddha? As the one who possesses perfect wisdom and merit, how could the Buddha be afraid of a ghost?" The Buddha replied, "There is no need to be angry." Although Nagapala seems to be quite slow-witted right now, through the insight and skillful means of the Dharma, he will gradually enter the right path and eventually attain fruition. Although Nagapala was a bit slow-witted to begin with, he eventually reached arhathood by practicing the Dharma. I have seen this quite often. People can appear to be dull when they first enter the Dharma. Even they themselves feel embarrassed when they think back to how they used to speak and think, but nevertheless, as long as they practice diligently, they can become very good practitioners. The next verse states, "We pay homage to Kanaka Bharadvaja, who dwells on the western continent of Gaudiya, surrounded by 700 great Arhats, and makes the gesture of equanimity with his two hands. Grant your blessing so that the life of the teacher may be secure and the teachings may flourish and spread." The eighth Arhat is called Kanaka Bharadvaja, or Kanaka in short. Next line states, "Kanaka dwells on the western continent of Gaudiya, surrounded by 700 great Arhats. According to Nadimitra, he dwells in the east continent of Puravadeha, surrounded by 600 Arhats." Next line states, "He makes the gesture of equanimity with his two hands." This gesture represents meditative concentration, which helps our mind to be settled, thereby enabling us to gain mastery over the external world. We should pray to Kanaka to grant his blessings so that the life of the teacher may be secure and the Sutrayana and Tantrayana teachings may flourish and spread. Kanaka's story is recorded in the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish. You can check it out yourself. I will briefly talk about the story. In Shrivasti, a lovely boy was born into the family of a wealthy householder. When he was born, the boy's hands were in fists. When they loosened, 2 gold coins were found in his palms. As soon as the parents took the gold coins away, 2 more would immediately appear. As a result, overnight, the family's treasure house became full of gold coins. Therefore, people call this boy Golden Treasury. As he grew up, the merit that he had accumulated in the past became to bear fruit, and he developed the wish to become a Buddhist monk and receive permission from his parents. In India, during those times, he would traditionally seek permission from his parents before taking ordination. The same custom used to exist in Han region during Tang Dynasty.
Oh, yin. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. Oh. 这个声音小一点啊。 喂，哦，老苏这是对了，哦，罗斯上，罗斯上，拉苏，天南北我个腾挪马因比人你来西就把那娘他把你关进去，哦，拉苏。哦，다 도의 강섬 그 드닝 책이 원강진나 요비 머티아 부모인나 자 캐스린나 자 스동 스조인나 가성대랑 책이 원강진 그 투모마인 비르니나 자가 낭추인나 자가 너 다른든 잠불은 금 개바당나 대진든 잠불은 금뭐 탐칙 그 영나 유진 그 노르 따브지 기롱하단 상면대라 하정 또능시 그 요기네 optimus 같은 요너래 옛날에 아른 금 통스 그 원도시니나 ngachu wod reng narjun so yin nang wod reng tardin so gare ge na da na ngum man jan jan na san gi bi chun de la ta pa dang na ta nang dang na devjin de na ji lama kum chok sam da na pa bu gen dam ba tam chi da na yar ji sip gur dan dimu wang de she ji jan zi na da ngum gu ma tam chi da na de ri kerong de ji kar san de rang da lo song de so tam chi zo ke ji zi ma ra ji ge yang ge yo chan de dimu zu re sam ge yo de yin ni na da lo sir ge ti zong de da de ni kerong kar san de rang ge wod gang jin 나인나 자가 머니 치료용어 다 겨르시나 요비 드니 다리가 옷그 따르펀닥 직바가는 머리 같이 장마텔라요나 마오네 금나 장메 지 봄밤 냥십다나 대진도 동심 냥기거 고게네나 ngachagi karsan tereng ge rang ge ji tnong mayin bi rigne da tnong mayin bi chuundela 통친 시기다나 대진도 영나 지금 낙준 주인나 단디 타다 로중 시기다 하정걸 첨보를 삼고요 캬버도 영는 지기 웃는 거 지금 개바당는 웃는 거 낙준 주능나이나 낭춘데라 지금 다지 로중 시네 대진도 달라 무바당나 따빠요도 진용 안주고 요주 년카티모요그 더인니나 다르 디춘도 당때니 체령에다나 나충 다리가 지금 옷그 지금 다지 르니 치고 몸토나다 디모주인이나 지금 오마가 삼밥 종오다는 대진도는 지금 조라이 하거 고근에는 장마근에는 지금 젠로아 샘슨 탐치다 지금 판비샤 접기온다 하정까지 채워려 삼고요. 드니 지금 르니다 담반 디모주인이나 다 당상 화름저다는 대진도 총련저다 디모토 탐치 그나한 고문 코리 결용에다 장마가 양의 지금 다리가 다 르니인데라 로종 시기다나 디 능가 양의 나와산 기비춘도 가선대랑 다 지금 득바지 양마 시아장 개와 퍼좀 속버려 르는 셈내 용선다 는 산기 담바인 제이다나 득하 머시기다 개업 접기온도 산기 좀던 데가 나 추금 타득 바이너레 단 데라 로종 시기든 에테나 하정까지 쳔보려 삼고 요라 라소 올라서 다때랑 ngachiki namlo sarve tivzang dala sanlo tang janjina tajing zamulung gmur soso yana sidang sena rang soso la ji losir ge lchur ndadang manja monzu de yokuyo nre yinna yana kawa kangjimba tang ngachiki wang de shiji janjina chukin chungzung gambone zonte ta wardana 지 워클로서도 잔다 마임 바가는 기빌람도 드니 무라랑 소소가야나 지금 초덴버기단 몰음 저기단 대진도 개와 접기고 니모즈다나 대치 지그네나 드니 참매 시야한도 접기요드네 대인이나 책에 다리가 다지 미에 요바 세토다나 남사 요바 야투조제나 저게네나 드니 다리가 다 로스르 체스가 디브정 데르테니 케로 무라랑 소소야나 론디나 아지 개와이 합 접기다나 대진도 잔나 지금 판밥 접기다는다 니무고 타답시아 존재다 하전 까르체네레 막독제면은 가스데르는 책이 오바 탐치그나 양나 너나 지금 시에총 예나다나 대진드는 지금 즌자면 잡시아드나다나 장근 고르쿠시에드나 전자 티 라속바게는 먹기와 지금 시아와 쇼파 머역바무 멀럭바무 ዝግ드나 가스데름 종담 종점바이너레 드니 머라랑 수수양나 지금 로스르키티 춘두조 드니 제령 셈라 담자다나 몰로이 하르지다나 다 테스타위시기다나 하전까지 체고 삼고 lakso tani chamala trashi delagje trashi delaga 乱说一点不知道说啥多长时间用了多长当然我们的时间里面要推出了就这个要减下去刚才讲到哪里啊就是讲到
Where were we? Right, golden treasury. After he obtained his parents' consent, golden treasury became a novice monk and observed the monastic precepts. Then he received full ordination as a bhikkhu. At the ceremony, he prostrated to every monk who was present. Afterwards, by following the Buddha's teachings and practicing diligently, he attended Arhathood. One monk asked the Buddha why he could have such fortune and spiritual attainment. The Buddha then told a story. During the time of Buddha Vipassana, there was a wealthy merchant who made a grand offering to the Sangha. A poor man rejoiced over this virtuous act. At the same time, he used 2 gold coins that he earned from selling firewood to sincerely offer to the Buddha and the Sangha. Because of this wholehearted offering that he made, he enjoyed such great merit. This monk, golden treasury, was the poor man in that former life. There is a similar story in the biography of Ashoka the Great. Once, King Ashoka made a grand offering to the Sangha at his palace. Seeing this, one of his maidservants was very saddened because she didn't have anything to make such an offering. Later, she found a coin and offered it to the Sangha with aspirations and dedications. Soon afterwards, she passed away and took rebirth as the daughter of King Ashoka. In one of the palms of her hand, there was a gold coin, and whenever it was taken away, one more would appear. King Ashoka asked an Arhat why this happened. The Arhat said it was because the offering that she made to the monastics with the coin as a maid in her past life. Hearing this story, we should never underestimate the impact of even the most humble offering. It's important that we do so without any stinginess. In the Han regions, there are many well-off people who would like to make offerings to a particular monk or guru. Doing so will only generate great merit if they are a noble being. If instead the recipient is an ordinary being, this would be more like an act of charity rather than an act of offering. Consequently, the merit would not be so great. Therefore, if we want to make offerings, it's best that we do so to the Sangha as a whole. Because in a monastery like Larangar, there are thousands of monastics there. It's impossible that there is not a single noble being among them. So the surest way is to make offerings to the Sangha. When I meet with some benefactors, I always advise them to make their offerings to the monastic Sangha as a whole. Very often, I see cases where someone makes an offering to a particular guru based on a personal preference, but later comes to regret it. So while the merit of making an offering is incredible, the most deserving recipient is the monastic Sangha. Back to the elder Kanaka. In the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, he attended Arhatwood. It's said that if we pray to Kanaka constantly, our wealth will improve. Some people think they are so poor, so they would chase after any guru, saying, "Lama, can you please grant me the practice of Zambala? I want to be rich right away." While if this guru still solicits donations from benefactors, I'm not sure whether he holds the Zambala practice or not. Anyhow, if one prays to Kanaka based on merits accumulated from the past, one's wealth is most likely to increase. Without such merit, despite the ability of the gurus and arhats, any attempt to increase wealth will be in vain. Next verse states, "We pay homage to the noble elder Bakula, who dwells on the northern continent of Uttarakuru, surrounded by 900 great arhats, and holds a mongoose with his 2 hands. Grant your blessing so that the life of the teacher may be secure and the teaching may flourish and spread." The 9th elder is Bakula. He dwells on the northern continent of Uttarakuru. Together with the retinue of 900 arhats that surround him, he holds a wealth-bestowing mongoose in his hands. Bakula is considered to be an equivalent of Zambala. The mongoose is a well-known symbol of wealth. Zambala also holds one in his hands. Bakula is also known as Vakula. The Amitabha Sutra mentions Vakula. While on Dingguanpeng's painting of this elder, the priest of Emperor Qianlong mentions this elder's name as Bakula. Many people recite the Amitabha Sutra daily, but have no idea who Vakula is. There are stories of Bakula in the Vinaya texts. Around 70 years before Buddha Shakyamuni was born, Bakula took birth in a Brahmin family. After his father passed away, he became a vagabond and began ascetic practice on a mountain. He would wear tree bark at the time. This is why he was called Bakula, which is the name of a tree in Sanskrit. He also became known as one who wears tree bark. By the way, in the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish, Bakula is called the man with two families. Continue with Bakula's story in the Vinaya text. While Bakula was practicing on the mountain, Purna built a grand hall at the foot of the mountain and laid out grand offerings for the Buddha Shakyamuni and his retinue. Since it was very far, the Buddha and his retinue used their magical power to fly to the hall to accept the offerings. At that time, Bakula witnessed the spectacular arrival of the Buddha and his retinue from the top of the mountain. He was over 100 years old. As he saw them flying through the sky, a tremendous wave of devotion arose in him. It would, however, have taken him a very long time to walk down. He thought that by the time he arrived, the ceremony would be over and he would miss his chance. So, with deep faith in the Buddha and his teaching, Bakula jumped from the mountainside without a second thought. The Buddha caught Bakula through his miraculous powers so that he was unharmed. The Buddha accepted him into the Sangha and gave him teachings. Within a short time, Bakula practiced vigorously and attended arhathood. Among all the disciples of the Buddha, Bakula is considered to be the foremost example of devotion. Bakula has strong and genuine renunciation, and his understanding of the Dharma was also exceptionally profound. This is a brief story of how Bakula became a monk and attended arhathood, according to the Vinaya texts. According to transmission of the Dharma treasury, Bakula lived until 160 years old. Though he lived a very long life, Bakula remained in perfect health and had never fallen ill. He is unlike some Dharma fellows here, who either catch a cold, have a headache, or are in a very bad mood, and so forth. They constantly feel unwell. In comparison, Bakula never fell sick. What was the reason? According to this text, in one of his previous lifetimes, Bakula was an extremely poor man. One day, he acquired some medicine and generously offered it to a monk who had a terrible headache. As a consequence of this act, for many lifetimes thereafter, he never falls ill and remained perfectly safe from any harm. Actually, Bakula's early life before he became a vagabond, there are two versions of the story. I will tell the one documented in this text first. Bakula's mother passed away when he was little. Later, his father remarried. And he was brought up by his stepmother, but this new stepmother disliked him intensely. Once, when she was making flatbread over fire, little Bakula came up to her and wanted to take a piece. The stepmother became very irritated and threw him into the fire, burying him with coals. Later, his father looked everywhere for his son and finally found him buried in the pit of the fire and pulled him out to safety. the boy was alive and completely unharmed. On another occasion, the stepmother was cooking meat, and the boy approached, wanted to take a piece. She became very angry with him and threw him into the pot of boiling water. The father again searched for his son and called out Bakula's name. When he heard a sound coming from the pot, he then saved Bakula, who was totally unharmed. Another time, when the stepmother was crossing a river, Bakula followed along. She got so angry and threw him into the water. A torrent carried him away, and he was swallowed by a big fish. A fisherman caught that fish and brought it to the market to sell that fish. Bakula's father happened to be there at the time and bought that very fish. When its stomach was split open, Bakula was right there and hurt. In the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish, there is a story of the man with two families, which presents another account of Bakula's life. Actually, the word Bakula or Vakula means two families. During the time of the Buddha, a wealthy but childless household finally had a boy. The whole family was overjoyed and celebrated by the bank of a river. The guests passed the infants around, but accidentally dropped the boy into the water. A fish ate the child and was later caught by a fisherman. The fisherman then gifted the boy to the wealthy employer. The boy's family heard about this incident and demanded to have their son back, so the two households had a dispute. The king then commanded both households to share custody of the child. Later, the boy became a monk and eventually attended Arhathood. The bhikkhus asked the Buddha what the man with two families had done to survive in the belly of the fish and become an arhat in such a short time. The Buddha answered, in a previous life, he took refuge in the three jewels and kept the precept of not killing, and through that merit, he was never harmed in all his later lifetimes and attended Arhathood. The two stories differ slightly, but both clearly describe the law of karma. By non-killing or by offering medicine to the Sangha, we can remain healthy and free from sickness in all our future times. We can see that there are some people who have a very strong immune system and never seem to get sick. This could be an indication that in their past lives, they performed many virtuous acts and perhaps offered medicine to monastics. On the other hand, some people had very poor health. This may be because they haven't performed any virtuous acts, or even worse, harmed others in their past lives. In a word, there is no way that one suffers abuse or dies without any reason. Everything happens for a reason. The most profound teaching given by the Buddha Shakyamuni concerning the relative world is the law of cause and effect. Most Buddhists have a fairly good understanding regarding this principle. It would benefit non-Buddhists as well if they understand this principle. If we ignore this basic fact, we will end up feeling wronged and constantly encounter all sorts of problems. Sometimes even Buddhists complain, I have been a very kind person my whole life. How could this happen to me? This type of complaint is not uncommon. We should not just acknowledge present life. We should accept our past and future lives, just as we acknowledge yesterday and tomorrow. Say we do a good deed today, it might not come into fruition on the same day. Imagine a student has been working very hard at school today, but the day before yesterday, he stole something. Today, the teacher found out about his theft and plans to punish him. If the student argues, it's so unfair, I've been behaving really well from the morning till now and done all my assignments. Well, the teacher would say, the punishment is not for your performance today. The reason is you took someone's pen the day before yesterday. To sum up, when we pray to the elder, Bakula, we will receive his blessings. We will cover one more verse today.
刚才也别人借用你们的时间，今天是我没有对啊，不然的话，不过也可以，今天我们的课也没有耽误的话，很好。要不要再讲？
Should I continue? I don't think you guys have any other important matters to attend to at this point. Next verse states, we pay homage to the noble elder Rahula, who dwells in the land of Priyangu, surrounded by 1,100 arhats and holds a jeweled crown. Grant your blessing so that the life of the teacher may be secure and the teachings may flourish and spread. We pay homage to the noble elder Rahula. Rahula was the biological son of the Buddha. He received this name because he was born during the time of a lunar eclipse. According to another source, Rahula means fetter in Sanskrit. He received this name because he remained in the mother's womb for 6 years, which was a fetter. Next line states, he dwells in the land of Priyangu, surrounded by 1,100 arhats. This depiction is the same in Chinese sources. He holds a jeweled crown. It's said that once Rahula taught the Dharma to a celestial king and his retinue, they then attended liberation from samsara thereafter. To express his gratitude, the celestial king offered a jeweled crown to Rahula. We pray to Rahula so that the life of the teacher may be secure and the teachings may flourish and spread. Let's briefly talk about Rahula's birth first. On the night that Siddhartha planned to leave the palace, he realized that his renunciation would cause people speculate that the reason of his runaway was because he has been unable to conceive a son. Siddhartha also knew that his son would play an important role in upholding the Dharma. So according to many sources, Rahula was conceived that night. On the very day that Siddhartha attended enlightenment at the Vajra seat, his son Rahula was born. Therefore, Yashodhara carried Rahula in her womb for a total of 6 years. During her pregnancy, it's said that Yashodhara's body showed no obvious change. This is because Yashodhara emulated Siddhartha and also led an ascetic life at the palace. Later, hearing that Siddhartha had regained his strength and attended enlightenment, Yashodhara began to eat nourishing food, and this enabled her to give birth to Rahula. When Rahula was born, people inside and outside the palace, including King Sodadana, suspected that Yashodhara had committed adultery. Anyway, different scriptures tell different accounts regarding this, thinking that it was such a disgrace. King Sodadana wanted to have the Sakyas to kill Yashodhara, and they wanted to throw them both into the fire. This story is recorded in the Sutra of the Storehouse of Sundry Valuables. To prove her innocence, Yashodhara declared, if the child is indeed the descendant of the great Bodhisattva, let the fire be extinguished and let it fall to burn us. She then jumped into the fire with Rahula. Surprisingly, the fire immediately turned into a cool lake. They were on a lotus flower, completely unharmed. This account can be found in different scriptures. In the Vinaya texts, it said that Yashodhara tried to prove her innocence by tying a large rock to Rahula and throwing him into a pond. She said, if he is indeed the son of the great Bodhisattva, let him float. If he is not, then let him drown. She then threw Rahula into the water. Both the child and the rock remained afloat. There are some stories concerning the controversy around Rahula's birth. Anyhow, these miraculous happenings made people believe that Rahula was indeed the son of the Buddha. That's the story about Rahula's birth. Why did Rahula stay such a long time in his mother's womb? As I explained in my lectures on a treatise of Tibetan Pure Land Buddhism, the reason is explained in Abhinay's Kramana Sutra. Once in the past, the daughter played a trick on her mother to let her mother carry the milk for 6 kroshas. The daughter was Yashodhara, and because of that karma, she carried Rahula in her womb for 6 years. As for Rahula, the reason why he stayed in his mother's womb for that long is recorded in the Vinaya texts. Yashodhara and Rahula had their respective karma that caused them to experience the results. As for Rahula, a long time ago, there were 2 practitioners, a guru and his disciple. One day, the disciple accidentally drank the guru's water. He immediately regretted and apologized sincerely to the guru. The guru didn't think that was a big deal and forgave him. Nonetheless, the disciple insisted that he be punished. The guru didn't punish him. Then the disciple went to the king and requested for punishment. He told the king, I drank my guru's water. Please punish me according to the law. The king replied, there are no laws that apply to such a case. Therefore, I cannot issue such punishment. As the disciple insisted on a punishment, the king became irritated and told him to stay where he was until he returned from his hunt. The king went away for 6 days, forgetting all about him. The disciple remained in that spot for 6 days without moving. 6 days later, after being reminded by his ministers, the king let the disciple go. The king was Rahula.
也有这样的，这个是应该说是在这个毗拉耶经的这个婆身世啊。
Because of making this man stay in one place for 6 days in his former life, Rahula was to remain in his mother's womb for 6 years as a karmic consequence. How did Rahula take ordination? After the Buddha attained enlightenment, he returned to King Suddhodana's palace in order to teach the Dharma. Yashodhara had a strong wish to reconnect with the Buddha. So he made many attempts through Rahula, such as asking Rahula to bring a love potion. But since he was the awakened one, the Buddha saw through her trick and didn't drink the potion. Later, Rahula was taken away by the Buddha, but some sources say it was Moggallana. Anyhow, Rahula then joined the Sangha and the Buddha entrusted him to Shariputra. Being deeply saddened, Yashodhara said, "There were 8 kings who proposed to me, yet I turned them all down so that I could be with Prince Siddhartha. Yet, not only did he abandon me, he also took away my dear son." This is exactly how some people react today when their child or spouse wishes to become a monastic. They can't bear the pain of family separation. The Buddha knew how Yashodhara felt. So he sent his manifestation to appear in the sky before her to remind her of the vow that she made before Buddha Dipamkara. As she recalled the past, she was reconciled. She eventually attained realization as well. Then how did Rahula attain arhathood? Is recorded in the Samyukta Agama. After Rahula joined the Sangha, he practiced diligently. Once he went to see the Buddha for pith instructions that would enable him to attain arhathood very quickly. The Buddha observed that it was not yet the right time for him to receive such teachings. If the Buddha were to share the profound Dharma with Rahula at that time, it would not benefit Rahula. Therefore, the Buddha told Rahula to teach the 5 aggregates to people. Then Rahula did so. After a while, he came back and begged the Buddha to give him the teaching. Observing that he was still not yet mature enough to receive the Dharma, the Buddha asked him to teach on the 12 sense bases. When Rahula returned again to request the pith instructions, he was told to spread the 12 links of dependent origination. Speaking of this, once I listened to a professor giving a lecture on the 12 links of dependent origination, but he didn't speak about their true meaning. I think we should explain the profound meaning on this topic when we give teachings. That professor was well known. He tried to explain this profound topic through a story centered around a businessman and a beautiful lady. He used Buddhist terms like ignorance, consciousness, name, and form, but the story was quite irrelevant to the 12 links of dependent origination in Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism places great importance on an in-depth study of the 12 links of dependent origination. In our course on the Prajnaparamita Sutras is an important and profound topic that requires special study, so this shouldn't be approached too lightly. When we give teachings, such as the 12 links or Four Noble Truths. It's important that we teach properly. We shouldn't dumb down the meaning just because we think the audience won't understand us. Even if the audience doesn't completely get the message, we still need to teach properly so that they will get benefit from these profound teachings. Back to the story, Rahula gave teachings on the 12 links and returned to ask the Buddha for the teaching, but still, the time was not yet right. The Buddha then told Rahula to contemplate in solitude on all the teachings he gave. Rahula obeyed and then returned to the Buddha. The Buddha then gave him the teaching that all contingent phenomena are impermanent. By contemplating on impermanence, Rahula attended Arhathood. So, impermanence is indeed a truly profound teaching. Regarding this Arhats, there are lots of stories about their lives, which are recorded in different sutras. There is a lot to explore if we explained in depth, but we don't have that time. After the Buddha passed into parinirvana, Rahula continued to uphold the Dharma teachings as requested by the Buddha. The Buddha also implored all the Tathagatas of 10 directions to grant their blessings to Rahula so that he could be able to uphold the Dharma in this world. This is why it's so important that we pray to the elder Rahula for the Dharma to prosper. For the Dharma to prosper in our world, every one of us should sincerely resolve to propagate the Dharma. Don't think that you are incapable of spreading the Dharma because you are merely a lay practitioner or an ordinary monastic. Actually, every one of us can be a lamp. Even if we're not yet capable of dispelling all the darkness of the world, we can illuminate ourselves and others around us. Though in the chapter of wisdom from the way of the bodhisattva, there are debates on whether the lamp can illuminate itself or not. We don't expand on that point. The point here is each one of us should try to become a bright lamp. To achieve this, it is very necessary that we first study the profound Dharma teachings and then try to gain some experiences through practice. Otherwise, if we're lazy in our Dharma study and practice, how can we expect to inspire others? It's like those who are not able to support their families cannot help others. I noticed that some Chinese filmmakers always seem to include a character in their movie who becomes a monk or a nun because they have failed in their life and have no option but to run away. This is highly misleading. We would probably be treated differently if we were another religion. Of course, we can't deny that there are some monks who do fit that profile, but a few individual cases cannot represent Buddhists as a whole. Authentic Buddhist practitioners carry the great responsibility far beyond caring for a family and the department at work. They certainly have the wisdom and ability to care for not only one family, but a much larger group of people. But they have chosen to apply their skills and wisdom to a far greater cause that is working for the benefit of all sentient beings. So everyone should cultivate a greater aspiration to propagate the Dharma wherever you are. Over the years, I have noticed that many Buddhists do feel greatly enriched and empowered by their spiritual practice. They realize that Dharma practice is not just about fixing their own problems by practicing alone. which is many people's impression of Buddhists. A real Buddhist practitioner bears great responsibility for the welfare of oneself and others. If we have that altruistic intention, whatever suffering we go through, it will not disturb us. On the other hand, if we only think of ourselves all the time, we will always be complaining about everything. We will be incapable of solving even the slightest problem that's commonly seen. So we need to pray to the great master of the past, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, to grant us blessings constantly. The blessings may be intangible, but their power is incredible. Especially during great Dharma assemblies, it's very important to make aspirations. We never know when we will have the same chance to attend such a major gathering of the Sangha again. Even if we only recite the King of Aspiration prayer once a day in this way, it will have great benefit. We should aspire to have the power to propagate the Dharma and benefit beings in all future lifetimes. We should immerse ourselves in such aspirations while reciting the prayer, even if it's just once a day. The power of aspiration will make our wish come true one day. In summary, when we study Buddhism, we shouldn't focus solely on our own personal practice, such as reciting the name of the Amitabha or Mani Mantra. Of course, this will have some benefits, but in this information age, it's more important that we make good use of the information technology and make a huge positive impact on a great many people. This is an age of great possibilities. If used to disseminate the Dharma, it can bring a lot of benefits to many people onto the virtuous path. On the other hand, if it's used for negative ends, many people will end up in the lower realms. As Buddhists, we must focus on whatever might help us on our path to liberation. At the same time, even if only once a month or once a year, we should strive to inspire other people to follow the Dharma. That's all for today.